Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Steve-O, from chaos to clarity, the unlikely evolution of a stunt icon. Steve-O has one of those careers you simply couldn't engineer in a lab. Born Stephen Gilchrist Glover in 1974, he grew up bouncing between countries with his diplomat dad, always the class clown, always testing limits. What started as a kid chasing attention with backyard stunts eventually morphed into one of the most recognizable and chaotic personalities in entertainment. He first carved out his place in pop culture through Jackass, the MTV hit that redefined slapstick for a new generation. While the whole cast pushed boundaries, Steve-O made it something of an art form. Whether he was stapling things to his body, wrestling wild animals, or pulling off stunts no sane person would even dream up, he built a reputation as the show's fearless daredevil with a crooked grin. But behind the absurdist humor, there was a darker side. The extreme lifestyle didn't stop when the cameras did. Substance abuse spiraled, and by the late 2000s, Steve-O's life was in real danger. His friends staged an intervention, his mental health collapsed, and things got so rough that even he admits he didn't know if he'd make it out alive. Then came the plot twist nobody expected. He turned everything around. Steve-O went all in on recovery, got sober, rebuilt his career, and discovered something bigger than shock value. His stand-up comedy got sharper. His YouTube channel exploded with a mix of stunts, storytelling, and surprisingly thoughtful self-reflection. His podcast, Steve-O's Wild Ride, turned into a must-listen, showcasing a surprisingly empathetic, grounded side beneath the old Jackass bravado. These days, Steve-O is a rare example of someone who survived fame, addiction, and his own daredevil instincts, only to emerge clearer, kinder, and still unmistakably himself. He didn't ditch the chaos entirely, he just learned how to control it. His story isn't about stunts. It's about resilience. It's about taking a life most people would crash out of and turning it into something meaningful. He's still hilarious, still outrageous, still Steve-O, but now with a sense of purpose stitched into every scar. In Hollywood, redemption arcs can feel manufactured. Steve-O's feels earned. The making of a daredevil. Long before Jackass, Steve-O was the kid doing cartwheels through danger just to get a laugh. He studied at the Ringling Bros and Barnum and Bailey Clown College. Which sounds like a punchline until you realize how much discipline it actually takes. He learned juggling, acrobatics, and physical comedy. And that training gave him the precision that made his later stunts look wild but strangely controlled. But school didn't magically open doors. Before MTV fame, he shot and edited his own stunt tapes, hustled them to anyone who'd watch, and slowly built a reputation as a fearless misfit with a camcorder. When Jeff Tremaine and Johnny Knoxville were assembling the Jackass lineup, Steve-O wasn't just a great fit, he was the missing piece. Jackass, a cultural collision. Jackass arrived in the early 2000s like a slap in the face to polite TV. It was stupid, brilliant, juvenile, fearless, dangerous, and somehow charming through all the chaos. Steve-O became the embodiment of that energy. He wasn't acting, he was simply turning his natural outrageousness into entertainment. His stunts weren't just shock value. They were a kind of physical storytelling. He knew how to take an idea from, "Why would anyone do this?" to, "I can't stop watching." And he did it with a grin that said he absolutely shouldn't be trusted with his own ideas. The downward spiral. But behind the laughs, Steve-O was drowning. Fame intensified everything, especially his addictions. From arrest records to hospital visits to mental health crises, it got dark. In 2008, after alarming behavior and a desperate public plea for help, his friends and co-stars intervened. This wasn't a dramatic TV moment. It was life or death. Steve-O checked into treatment. And what followed was one of the most honest and public journeys into recovery that any celebrity has ever laid out. He released footage of himself at his lowest, not for attention, but for accountability. He looked straight at the world and said, "This is where this path leads." Climbing out recovery wasn't instant. It wasn't clean, but he stuck with it. Steve-O poured the same intensity he once threw into stunts into staying sober. It became a defining part of his identity, not a footnote. And as sobriety stuck, the rest of his life clicked back into place. He rebuilt his career, but in a smarter, more sustainable way. His comedy tours drew huge crowds. His documentary-style content grew a massive online following. His book, Professional Idiot, peeled back the curtain on his most chaotic years with blunt honesty and surprising heart. Steve-O's Wild Ride, the rebrand that wasn't a rebrand. The funny thing is, Steve-O didn't reinvent himself. He refined himself. His podcast, Steve-O's Wild Ride, took off because people realized he wasn't just the crazy guy from Jackass. He was someone who had lived through a lot and could have meaningful conversations about pain, resilience, creativity, fame, and mental health. He still does stunts, don't get it twisted. But they're calculated now, filmed safely, and infused with a wink instead of a self-destructive edge. A legacy written in bruises and honesty. What makes Steve-O stand out today isn't the stunts. It's his transparency. He talks about sobriety, therapy, self-worth, and the messy parts of growing up late. Fans don't just admire him. They feel connected to him. He's the rare celebrity who feels both iconic and approachable. Like a guy who's lived 100 lives and is genuinely grateful he survived them. His legacy is messy and loud, but also inspiring. You can burn your life down and still rebuild something better from the ashes. The philosophy behind the pain. People often look at Steve-O's stunts and think there's no philosophy behind it, just pure chaos. But talk to him now, and you start to see a method in the madness. His daredevil nature came from a cocktail of insecurity, childhood instability, and a hunger for validation. He wasn't trying to be the crazy guy at first. He was trying to be seen. Pain became the currency he used to buy attention. Later, he learned to turn that currency into storytelling, comedy, and even introspection. That shift is what keeps him relevant long after most shock humor figures fade out. Friendships that saved him. The Jackass crew isn't just a cast. They're a dysfunctional family that stayed bonded through disaster after disaster. Steve-O has been surprisingly candid about how much he owes his friends, especially Johnny Knoxville and Bam Margera. Knoxville became an anchor during the intervention period, showing up not as a co-star but as a guy who didn't want to lose his friend. It's wild to think that the same crew who lit fireworks off each other's bodies also held each other upright through addiction, injury, and loss. In a strange way, their brotherhood is one of Hollywood's most unlikely but enduring friendships. Rebuilding a body that had been through war. Sobriety didn't magically fix the damage Steve-O had done to himself. Years of stunts and substance abuse left him with chronic pain, dental destruction, and a stack of injuries. He went through surgeries, physical rehab, dental reconstruction, and countless lifestyle changes to keep himself functional. Instead of hiding it, he documented it. His transparency made fans root for him not as a spectacle but as a human being trying hard to stay alive and healthy. That vulnerability turned him from a stuntman into a storyteller. Comedy as catharsis. When Steve-O started doing stand-up, a lot of people assumed it was going to be cheap shock humor. Instead, he delivered raw, confessional comedy about addiction, humiliation, fame, and the bizarre situations he'd survived. His sets aren't just jokes, Their intimate memoirs disguised as punchlines. And people showed up in droves. Not just to laugh, but because he was saying the things most people are afraid to admit. YouTube Reborn. A new playground. Steve-O's YouTube channel became the perfect sandbox for him to experiment safely. The audience is loyal, the format is flexible, and he gets to control the narrative. He makes content that blends nostalgia with maturity, stunts, behind-the-scenes tours, candid vlogs, animal rescue stories, and mental health reflections. This version of him is still wild but grounded, polished but authentic. It's the Steve-O fans didn't know they wanted but immediately recognized as real. A voice in mental health and recovery. Steve-O isn't a doctor or a counselor, but he's become a powerful voice in the recovery community. He talks openly about addiction, therapy, relapse fears, and the realities of sobriety. He doesn't romanticize it, he doesn't preach. He simply tells the truth, which lands harder than any textbook. A surprising number of fans credit him for helping them seek treatment or feel less alone. He never planned to become that guy. He just evolved into him. Not just the Jackass guy anymore. What's impressive is that Steve-O didn't abandon his roots to move forward. He still celebrates the Jackass legacy. He still laughs at his past. He still respects the ridiculous art form they created together. But he's more than that. He's a comedian, content creator, recovering addict, animal lover, podcaster, and storyteller. He's proof that a chaotic youth doesn't disqualify you from having a thoughtful adulthood. Why Steve-O lasts? You can't manufacture his kind of longevity. He lasted because he never pretended to be perfect. He never tried to hide the ugly parts. He never sanitized his story. In an era obsessed with curated images, Steve-O remained messy, honest, self-deprecating, and human. People trust him because he's shown them every version of himself. And somehow, after everything, he's still here. Still working. Still creating. Still evolving. The strange art of fearlessness. Steve-O isn't fearless, and he's never claimed to be. That's actually the secret that made his stunts iconic. He gets scared. He panics. He screams louder than anyone else. And that vulnerability makes the audience feel the tension, not just watch it. His fear is part of the show. He once joked that he's not brave, just too dumb to walk away, but that's only half true. The real magic is that he pushes through fear on camera. That human element made Jackass feel more like a shared experience than a freak show. The economics of pain. One thing a lot of people forget is that Steve-O essentially built a career in a corner of entertainment no one else had monetized. Before the social media stunt era, he figured out that chaos grabs attention. Attention can be edited into storytelling. Storytelling builds loyalty. Loyalty becomes a career. He turned self-destruction into a brand. Then learned how to reroute that brand into something sustainable. That pivot is rare. Most people who peak in shock entertainment burn out fast, physically or emotionally. Steve-O outlasted the genre he helped create. The Jackass movies, a battle between comedy and mortality. The Jackass movies weren't just bigger versions of the show. They were almost like time-lapse portraits of men aging in real time while refusing to slow down. Each film had a slightly different Steve-O. Jackass the movie, 2002, young, wild, unstoppable, living off adrenaline and substances. Jackass number 2, 2006, the peak of recklessness, the stunts more absurd and dangerous, the lifestyle even more unstable. Jackass 3D, 2010, post-intervention. Newly sober, rediscovering who he was while still performing. Jackass Forever, 2022, older, wiser, physically limited, yet sharper and funnier than ever. Watching him across the films is like watching someone grow up on fast forward, bruises and all. The evolution feels raw because his real-life journey bleeds into the screen. A complicated relationship with fame. Steve-O's fame was never the glossy type. He didn't get the Hollywood treatment. He wasn't cast for his looks or voice or traditional.
Bye bye, thanks for watching. Bye.